Welcome to BeiJing Talking. I am BeiJing, a writer from China. Today, I want to talk about an issue that sits at the intersection of identity, morality, law, and institutions. We live in a world where a person can hardly ever be seen as just a person. Whether you like it or not, you will be labeled by group tags, nationality, ethnicity, religion, skin color. And very often, people don't judge you by what you actually did. They judge you by what someone like you is assumed to do. That is exactly why two recent events, the Sydney shooting and the Guan deportation case, matter so much. Guan is a Han Chinese man. He took enormous personal risks to film and document the existence of Xinjiang's re-education camps, where the Chinese Communist Party has carried out systematic persecution and genocide against Uyghurs. After that, he left China, went to the United States, and applied for political asylum. After waiting for around 4 years, what he now faces is no longer mere uncertainty about the outcome of a procedure. While his asylum case has not yet reached a final decision, Guan Heng has been detained by U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement, the ICE. This means he is no longer simply an applicant awaiting a result. He has formally entered the control of the immigration enforcement system. In this situation, his fate is not determined by his own will, but by what the system chooses to do with him next. It is very possible that he will remove to a third country, such as Uganda, a place with no social ties to him, extremely fragile human rights protections and political transparency, and an economy that is highly dependent on China. For someone who publicly exposed the CCP's anti-human rights policies and therefore took a real political risk, this arrangement is not a neutral administrative procedure. It's a way of moving risk beyond America's field of vision. And it is in this process that he has gradually become a deeply awkward, deeply vulnerable case. His action clearly crossed the CCP's red line. Yet his identity does not match many people's imagination of a typical victim. What do people mean by a typical victim? Usually, it refers to those who have already suffered direct, visible, irreparable harm within a system of persecution. People who have been detained, sentenced, tortured, or people who belong to a group already widely recognized by international opinion as persecuted, such as Uyghurs. Guan Heng does not fit that established image. While he was in China, he truly did not suffer direct physical persecution. He was not imprisoned. He was not sentenced. He did not become a tragedy that had already happened. But that is not because what he did carried no risk. It is because he chose to leave China before the risk turned into concrete persecution. That is the point. In the hidden logic of many institutions and much public opinion, it is as if a person must first be crushed before being officially recognized as a victim. Those who made their choice earlier, who carried the risk earlier, who already lost their former life before persecution fully arrived, are instead treated as not typical enough, not pure enough, and sometimes not worth protecting. This is why we must understand Guan Heng's unique significance. In today's global narratives, Han Chinese is often reduced to the role of perpetrator, beneficiary, or silent bystanders of persecution. Guan Heng's existence is itself a rejection of that simplification. His significance is not that he is perfect. It is that he proves something essential. Even within a group deeply entangled with persecution, there are still people who refuse to represent it and who are willing to expose it and resist it. That matters morally, and it matters even more historically. Now, let us shift our attention to another event that seems completely different in Sydney, Australia. There was a shooting attack targeting Jews. The perpetrator was Muslim, but at the scene, the person who risked his life to subdue the attacker and save others was also a Muslim. This contrast is not an accident. It again reveals a fact we do not want to face, but must acknowledge. Group label, do not act. Only living individuals act. Yet individuals are often forced to pay the price for an entire group's reputation. Guan Heng is one example. The Muslim man in Sydney who saved lives is another. They did not merely make personal moral choices. They broke stereotypes from within their own groups, and they reshape what conscience looks like. In principle, humanity has a moral duty to protect people like them. Those who have, in some sense, broken away from the roles assigned to their group. In reality, they can also become a new burden to the system they live under. On this point, Guan Heng's case is more striking. A system can tolerate and sometimes even needs hero narratives that break stereotypes, like the Muslim hero in the Sydney shooting. But a system is not always good at, and not always willing to carry the person who breaks stereotypes as such. In the United States, Guan Heng is not treated as a hero. He is treated as an exception that makes the system uncomfortable. If the US grants him asylum, it effectively acknowledges the severity of the Xinjiang issue, and it sets a precedent for many similar cases to follow. In the ideal narrative, America stands on the side of human rights and shelters all dissidents. In real operation, America must consider political cost, avoid diplomatic friction, control the scale of immigration, and outsource certain troublesome cases. So Guan Heng has become a new transferable risk. What he faces is not deportation back to China, but removal to a third country. Please notice what this already implies. The United States is not denying that sending him back to China would be dangerous. It means the system recognizes that the risk exists. Yet it chose another road at the same time. Not protection, but risk transfer. Third country removal. Legally, this can be defended. Morally, it is an unsettling choice. Because Uganda is not chosen because it is safe, but because it is distant, low profile, and politically cheap. This is a politic of convenience. It may not yet be America's total collapse of values. A more precise description is that values are being pushed aside. So, if Guan is indeed sent to Uganda, what might he face? There are probably three possibilities. First, he could be forced into a low visibility survival mode for a long time. He might be allowed short-term stay or some form of refugee status without stable legal standing. His movement and his ability to speak could be restricted, and he would be gradually pressured to disappear from public view into a position that affects no system at all. Second, over time, his indirect risk could accumulate. He could remain under the attention of local security organs, driven by informal pressure linked to China. His living space would shrink and shrink. Eventually, he might be advised to move on to another country or forced to flee. Third, he could be transferred again, not necessarily back to China immediately, but deturned on fabricated grounds, then handed to another third country. These cases are hard to track and hard to hold anyone accountable for. Sometimes they never become news, yet they are the worst and the most dangerous outcome. If, in the end, Guan suffers harm in Uganda, or is indirect sent back to China through a third country, does the United States bear responsibility? The US might be able to shield itself legally, but morally, it cannot be innocent. Ethical responsibility cannot be outsourced this way. America knows the risk and still turns away. It has the ability to prevent the outcome and still chooses not to carry it. No matter what, the United States bears ethical responsibility for the result, not as a criminal definition, but as a definition written by history and conscience. Of course, we must honestly acknowledge another reality. Within the Chinese diaspora, there are indeed large numbers of fraudulent asylum claims. There are major chains of fabrication. There are individuals and organizations that profit in the name of anti-CCP politics and democracy movements. There are also people who fled China because of economic crimes or other criminal offenses, then claim political persecution abroad. these problems are real. Denying them only harms those who truly need protection. However, there is a line that must not be blurred. The existence of fraud does not erase moral clarity. The prevalence of fake asylum claim cannot become a reason to abandon a generally high-risk case. Guan Heng's risk is not hypothetical. In the past, multiple people who exposed Xinjiang's re-education camps have been detained, tried, disappeared, or forced into exile. This is not speculation. It is documented. So we return to the core question. Who protects those who break away from their assigned group? The answer is that it should be all of humanity. Because no matter what label they carry, their most essential label is human. They have never left the human family. On the contrary, they are among the most conscious, the bravest, and the most deserving of our respect. Only those who reject hatred from within their own groups have any real chance of breaking the narrative of collective hatred. If people like Guan Heng are abandoned, the message the world sends is this: do not record, do not expose, do not break away from your group, because once you do, you will be utterly alone. No society that still claims to respect human dignity can afford such a message. Because when an institution begins to treat moral courage as a risk, the future that belongs to humanity will not be justice. It will only be silence. Here, we should pray for the Muslim hero in the Sydney shooting and hope he recovers soon. At the same time, we must keep speaking up for Guan Heng. Because keeping the heat is not an emotional slogan. It's a real variable that can shape the outcome. Concretely, Guan Heng has not necessarily reached a point where Uganda is the only destination. Legally, third country removal is not beyond challenge. If it can be shown that Uganda's political security environment is highly fragile, that it lacks meaningful protection for dissidents, or that there is a security cooperation influenced by China, then removal to Uganda itself may constitute a disguised transfer or persecution risk. Moreover, even if asylum is not granted under the framework of the Convention Against Torture, if it can be shown that he faces a high likelihood of detention, handover, or indirect refoulement back to China in a third country, the law may still at least block this route. If major media continue to report, if members of Congress intervene, and if human rights organizations apply pressures on the Department of Homeland Security, this may not change the legal text, but it can change administrative discretion. In the end, the US is not unable to keep him. It is unwilling to bear the precedent effect. But once the political cost becomes higher than the cost accepting him, the balance can shift. So under what conditions is he almost certain to be sent away? The answer is cold and clear. When public attention drops quickly. When mainstream media stop following the case. And when legal arguments fail to block third country removal. The system's most rational choice is to remove this exception from view after attention fades. That is why today's discussion, speaking up, and analysis are not spectatorship in moral theater. They are a part of the variables that can affect real outcomes. When someone is morally worth protecting, but it's not easy for the current system to carry, his only chance has never been to wait for a sudden awakening of conscience. It's to force the system to resize the cost of every possible path. It's to make the cost of punishing more moral courage rise sharply. This is not a comfortable conclusion. But it is how the world we live in operates. And understanding this is itself a form of resistance. That's all for today. I wish Guan Heng good luck. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe, share, and spread the word.